On the back of the success of its first game Uplink, Introversion had found themselves at a crossroads. Darwinia, its next project, would firmly establish the company on the PC gaming scene.
It was an idea that came from something called the Indie Game Jam, which was a group of hackers and game programmers who got together for about 3 years in a row, and for just about 3 days, they would work intensively for a 3-day period and produce video games, like really, really quick, really dirty prototypes. And they made this game where they had like 100,000 sprites on screen at any one time. They were like exploiting modern graphics cards to use sprites, but more sprites than you'd ever seen, to make massive armies. And they didn't get as far as making any kind of polished game or anything like that, but they did have, it was a very interesting technology demo. And so I teamed up with somebody who was also at the same games company as me, called Andy Bainbridge, and we decided that we would try and make a kind of war game based on this idea, where the kind of unique feature was that there would be 100,000 units, and you would control the battle from a really high vantage point, looking down this vast battlefield underneath you. And that's where Darwinia was born. It was called Future War originally. It's a multiplayer war game with 100,000 units.
Tom and I were actually really besotted with Uplink and didn't want Chris to go on and do Darwinia, to be brutally honest. We were really kind of pulling him back. There was no attempt to put together like an estimate of how long development would take, and Tom and I were desperately trying to do deals. So we were talking to American publishers, we were talking to, looking at maybe trying to do a pocket PC version of Uplink. We thought, we've got this game, so let's move into a different direction. But Tom and I aren't particularly technically qualified. All right, I've got a computer science degree, but I'm not Chris. So Chris ended up being the focal point for kind of all of our development work. So we were trying quite hard to get Chris to do stuff like marketing stuff on the website, like surveys and things. And Chris would kind of do some of it, but, really, really wanted to get on and make the next game. And then he kind of did that, and Tom and I just continued with the whole kind of Uplink thing for a long time, actually. I can't really remember when it was that we switched. And Chris is in a difficult position because, or he has been in the past, because we always pull him back, and then when we realise that we can no longer commercialise the game, then we jump on his shoulders and say, come on, mate, when's the next one going to be ready?
We experimented for a long time. We worked on various systems like landscape systems and water, and we accidentally invented the Darwinian while we were doing it, because we needed a little placeholder sprite for the human beings, and you were so high up that it didn't matter what it looked like, so we just made a little stick man that was the Darwinian. And he's the same sprite, actually, even now, like years and years later. And so we started working on the controls, and quite quickly figured out that it was a lot of fun to watch a battle of that size, but no fun to play at all, because you've got no control over 100,000 units. You kind of group select and you go, okay, there's 20,000 guys in that direction, and it might as well just be 20 guys in that direction. It would be the same game. And so we gradually started shrinking the armies down and down and down, so you were controlling less and less units. And the idea was that the massive war would still be going on around you, but you wouldn't be directly controlling it. You'd be kind of just there, like these 5 squaddies in this enormous battlefield.
In the lead up to Darwinia, the team would find their resolve being tested, until a saviour came in the shape of Valve.
We tightened our belts, and I had a salary, so I was kind of all right, and I think that might have been integral with our survival, actually, because I was able to come in and kind of take a rational sort of view, because I wasn't under pressure, financially, whereas Tom and Chris were selling all their stuff on eBay, claiming benefit and all the rest. But by the time we'd run out of money, the Darwinia's conclusion was in our grasp. We could see it. And so I think initially when we ran out of money, we thought there's only going to be another couple of months of this. We can live for a couple of months, get some credit. And then 2 months became 4, became 6. But it was always the case that Darwinia was almost there.
Darwinia's launch wasn't particularly well handled. We launched it too expensive and had a lot of usability problems and some quite nasty bugs as well. And it did very well critically, but it didn't do so well commercially initially. So the thing about with Valve is not only did they have this enormous customer base and obviously immediate digital distribution, but it also gave us this chance to launch again with like a new demo and an improved control mechanism, and kind of launch Darwinia like the director's cut of Darwinia, how it should have been the first time around.
Introversion's next project was to see a return to the basic thrills of Uplink with Defcon. A chilling take on global conflict as nuclear warfare was played out in the eerily detached space of a desktop computer.
War Games is actually one of those movies like Tron that's always really inspired me. Whenever I watch it, ever since I first watched it, much younger, I always get like a little warm feeling inside. You know, it's just got an old, like really old, lovely retro 80s feel to it. And another classic example of a game that hasn't been made yet, a really simple 2D nuclear war simulator. You know, with Darwinia, I didn't actually show Darwinia to Mark and Tom for about 9 months while it was in development. With Defcon, I just didn't even tell them, actually. With Defcon, I just developed the first version of it without even telling them I was starting. And it was actually during Darwinia as well. Darwinia was in development, and I was kind of bored of Darwinia for a bit. So I kind of went on to Defcon for a while and developed this other game. And in like 1 week, I knocked together a really fast prototype of Defcon that had most of the elements in the game, actually.
Chris was developing Defcon at a time when he should have been working on Darwinia. And it's interesting, you know, because people in the mainstream industry would look at us and say, you know, that's massively, massively unprofessional. And, I mean, it is, because we ran out of money and, you know, real businesses can't operate like that. However, sometimes that's just the way creativity works sometimes, you know, that born out of this, you know, this kind of mess that Chris was in with Darwinia with no game, just tons of content, everything really difficult. He kind of, his brain just latched onto this very, very simple 2D concept that was very direct, you know, and kind of made that game.
I've long known and learnt that the next game doesn't always come in the best way when it's just like, okay, now the whole team is going to move on to the new next game.
Next up for Introversion is Multiwinia, a ballistic return to the world of Darwinia that's coming to the PC and Xbox Live later this year. Join us in the next instalment as we take a closer look at the game, as well as what lies ahead for the team.